Hey guys, Tyler Berger here with Bass Fishing HQ. Today I want to tell you why downsizing your flipping baits can sometimes mean the difference between catching a lot of big fish and catching hardly any fish at all. Stay tuned, it's going to be a good one. So guys, before we get into the video, this video is brought to you by the Bass Hat. So if you guys haven't checked out these hats, please click the link below and you'll be able to pick up one of these hats and help the Bass Fishing HQ channel. So today I really want to talk about flipping baits and why downsizing sometimes can honestly mean not only the difference between getting bit, but getting big bites. You know, a lot of times when we go flipping, a lot of us kind of pick up the same things, right? We might pick up a 1/2 ounce jig, or we might pick up a 3/8 ounce Texas rigged beaver. Maybe it's some sort of crawl bait. We all kind of like to fish the exact same things with the exact same weight. Today I want to tell you about a few situations where downsizing your bait can really help you to catch a lot more fish. And again, not only a lot more fish, but big fish. And guys, I want to tell you about a story of something that happened to me fishing a Bassmaster Open a few years ago that really opened my eyes to just how critical it is to really downsizing your baits from time to time. So I was fishing an Open on Douglas Lake down in Tennessee, and it was in September of the year, a little bit later in the year, and I had found a good flipping bite up shallow during practice. And I was flipping a 3/8 ounce beaver, the regular size 4.25 inch beaver, and I was getting a lot of bites. I was shaking off a lot of fish. Now during the tournament, what ended up happening is there was a lot of people, there was a lot of pressure in the area that I had found in. I picked up my flipping stick and I started flipping right away, doing what I had done in practice. And I'll never forget the first little tree that I came to that was in the water. I flipped in there and I literally felt a bass like mouth my bait. Like I literally felt it pick it up and almost mouth it and spit it out really, really quick. It was before I could even set the hook. And I thought, man, that's really weird. So just a few minutes later, I happened to notice that my co-angler flipped his bait in the exact same area, the exact same part of the bush that I had just had that fish mouth my bait, and lo and behold, the guy caught about a 2.5 pound bass. At the time, during that tournament, anything over about 2.5 pounds was really considered a big fish. And so I was like, dang it, you know, like that had to have been that fish that mouthed my bait. So about 15 minutes later, I actually caught 2 fish flipping my beaver. One was about 1 pound and one was about 1.5 pounds. And then about a half hour or so goes by, flip up into another like lay down willow tree, and the exact same thing that happened to me earlier happened again. All of a sudden, I literally felt a bass like pick up my bait and move it and drop it. And I know that this fish was not on a bed. I mean, it was in September of the year, and it was so weird to me. I was like, that is so weird. So I flipped back in there like 5, 6, 7, 8 times. I just kept flipping, trying to get that fish to maybe bite again. And pretty much I just was like, well, forget about it. Like, that fish ain't biting. And wouldn't you know, I move up a few feet and my co-angler flips his bait in there, and guess what? Bam, a 3.5 pounder, a big one. And it was in the exact same spot where I had just had that fish mouth my bait. In my mind, I'm thinking, man, maybe there's something to the bait that he's throwing. But I had caught so many fish and shook off so many fish in practice. Honestly, I was just super stubborn, right? I was super duper stubborn. I kept on going. I ended up catching a couple of more fish, but again, they were small fish. They were like 1.5 pound fish. I caught maybe one close to 2 pounds with my beaver. A couple hours later, I'm still looking for a limit, and I run into an area and the exact same thing happens, right? For the third time, I flip into this area where I had shook off a big fish in practice. I flip into this area and I swear that a fish had my bait. This time I didn't really feel it, but I picked up and I felt like there was weight there. And I set the hook and I swing and I miss and I hit nothing. And I'm thinking, what in the world, right? Like, what is going on? And so I'm sitting there wrecking my brains, and what do? I just keep being stupid. I flip back in there a bunch of times, right? I'm still not putting together everything, and I'm flipping back in there a bunch of times, nothing. And guess what? I move a few feet forward, my co-angler flips in there and catches a 4.5 pounder. Guys, this is literally a giant in this tournament. That one fish like means everything. And I'm like, all right, like I'm done being stupid, right? Like I can't do this anymore. So here I am, I'm flipping a 3/8 ounce beaver, a 4.25, the regular size beaver, and I'm catching a few fish, but I'm not catching the quality that my co-angler is. And I know for a fact now that he's caught some fish that mouthed my bait. And so I'm like, dude, you gotta tell me what you're throwing. He shows it to me. So he's fishing a 1/4 ounce weight with about a 3-inch crawl on it. And it happened to be a Zoom speed crawl, which this is no secret bait. This is a bait that works really, really well, but it's a very small presentation. You're talking about maybe 3 inches. So I'm like, all right, like, what pound test are you throwing? And he said 20-pound test. I knew it wasn't the line. I knew it wasn't anything like that. It was simply the bait that he was throwing. And so right away, I switch over. I have the exact same stuff. I switch over to the exact same thing that he's flipping. Literally within minutes of doing this, I actually end up losing about a 3.5 pounder that got me all caught up in a tree. And I end up filling out my limit after that. But it just clicked in my mind, like, this is the deal right now. Like, this is the difference between catching fish and catching quality fish. And it's actually downsizing the bait. Now, I went on to flip that bait the rest of the tournament. I ended up finishing like 32nd or 34th in that tournament. I got a nice check, and it was all because of me switching over to that downsize, that smaller bait. And so guys, that's what I'm talking about. In some situations, it's extremely important to downsize the bait that you're flipping, right? We all see the Greg Hackneys of the world and the Jason Christies flipping a big jig or flipping a big Texas rig, whatever. And we all want to go out there and do that. But sometimes, I'm telling you, it's the best thing to do to actually switch over to that smaller bait. Now, the crazy thing about that whole story was that about 2 years later, I was fishing another open. And guess what? I was flipping a 3/8 ounce beaver style bait in that tournament. Again, this time though, I was smart, right? And I had been flipping all day and I hadn't gotten bit because I was fishing the James River. It's a tidal river. I wasn't in the right tide for most part of the day, but late in the day, the tide got right and I started getting a few bites on my beaver. But guess what? I had the same thing happen. These fish would pick up this bait or they would hit it. I'd set the hook and just completely miss. And after 2 fish this time, after setting the hook, I realized I need to downsize. I pulled out a 1/4 ounce bait. I didn't have any Zoom speed crawls on me, but I did have some 3-inch chigger crawls, which it's a very small crawl style bait. And dude, I caught 3 fish on back-to-back casts out of the exact same tree. So with all that being said, guys, I have 3 situations where I think downsizing your bait is extremely important. The first situation is going to be exactly what I kind of just talked about a minute ago, and that's when you're fishing highly pressured bodies of water. Guys, sometimes you're going to be fishing water and you're going to be sharing it with others. It just happens. And for me in Ohio, this happens a lot. Like, this happens all the time. So if you're fishing an area and you feel that there's a lot of people in that exact same area, that is the time that you want to downsize. Go to your 1/4 ounce, go to your 3/16. Hey, you could go to an 1/8 ounce weight, flip a really small creature bait if you want. Just downsize, and I think that it's going to help you to not only catch more fish, but also catch bigger fish, just like what happened to me. The other situation that I think is extremely important to actually downsize your bait is when you're fishing rapidly changing conditions. So what I mean by that is, say for instance, you're fishing during the spring, the weather's starting to warm up, and then you have a cold front move in. Bam, changing conditions, flip the smaller bait. That is key into getting a lot more bites, and like I said, getting a lot bigger bites as well. So the last situation that I want to talk about is also kind of what I explained before. If you've been on a good flipping bite and you start missing fish, like, you might run into the same situation that I did. Like, literally, I felt fish picking my bait up and spitting it out before I could even set the hook. I would flip into an area, feel a fish, set the hook, completely miss it. If that is happening to you, if you are missing fish, downsize. Do the same thing. Go to that 1/4 ounce. Go to a very small bait. So guys, along with all that, I think it's also important that sometimes it might be best to actually downsize your line as well. Instead of flipping 20 or 25 pound test, Step down in your rod, use a medium heavy rod instead of a heavy action and use 15-pound test. I think that that's only going to help you get more bites on top of that. So guys, this is just kind of a quick tip of when to downsize your baits and when to downsize your lures. And I think if you do this, it's gonna help you to catch fish and it's gonna help you to catch quality fish when those situations arise. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please set the hook on that like button, comment below, and please subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.